Hi, I'm your host, Becky Davis, and you're watching Garden Wise, Santa Barbara's most informative show about sustainable landscaping. As the drought continues, more and more residents are replacing their dying lawns with beautiful water-wise gardens, and we're here to help you learn how. In this episode, we'll cover how to remove your lawn, how to design your dream garden and choose the best plants to fill it with, and even how to maintain your irrigation system once it's all complete. Up first, landscape architect and author Billy Goodnick talks to two clients who are ready to remove their lawn, but need a little help with the process.
Stacy and Fred, welcome back.
Billy.
Did you have fun thinking about the garden?
Yeah.
So?
Thank you very much for coaching us. I think we've finally come to some decisions.
Yes, we have. We have decided that we're going to get rid of the front lawn, but we will have some lawn in the back.
And with what's left over that isn't lawn anymore?
We're thinking, maybe some veggies,
Fruit trees.
citrus tree maybe. Just make it someplace that is enjoyable to just relax in.
Good place to entertain too.
Yes.
But I think we're gonna do the front lawn first, since basically everything's dead, everything's gone. I'm gonna go to Home Depot this weekend and just grab some plants and trees and seeds and stuff. Just dig it up and plant and watch the magic happen.
Great. Well, I love your enthusiasm, but a little bit of caution. There's gardens that haven't been watered for a year or two, and there's still some stuff lurking under there. Some of the plants like sour grass, Bermuda grass, can lay dormant for a long time without water. And as soon as you come in, start digging holes and putting water on those new plants, a lot of that stuff can come back and bite you. The last thing I want you to do is spend all that time putting plants in and then having the weeds come back and undo what you did. So the key here is patience. You need to really make sure you've gotten rid of the enemy before you start doing anything new and putting some water down there.
But if it's dead, can't we just rototill it under?
Rototilling it under would work if it was just a nice pure stand of like marathon fescue, no weeds, that sort of thing. In that case, you can just turn it under, it'll decompose, it'll actually build the soil up a little bit, and you could plant right into it in a few weeks. One of the simplest methods is called sheet mulching. And what you're doing there is you're actually sort of composting, heating up the soil underneath and making sure the grass is really dead, or any of the weeds or anything growing there. The way that's done is to water a little bit, get anything that's growing there active so you've got some green. Some people put down a little bit of manure or fertilizer and then cover that with cardboard. The cardboard's covered with anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of mulch, ground bark, that sort of thing. What happens over time, and this can take a few months, is all of that heats up. It deprives the vegetation of photosynthesis. There's no sun reaching it, and eventually all of that breaks down, and you've got this wonderful, rich, organic soil that's mixed with the compost and the other things that are in there already. Great way to go.
Come to think of it, there is this one patch of grass. It seems kind of rustic when it's got runners, but it seems to be holding on, even though everything else is dead. It seems to spread really fast. Is this going to help with that?
It sounds like you're talking about Bermuda grass or kikuya, and those can be really tough. If you're patient, the sheet mulching will work, but if the timing is such that you've got to get in there sooner, then we resort to some chemical sprays. But the most important thing there, I always recommend my clients that they use a professional, somebody who's certified to spray. They follow all the safety precautions, use the minimal amount, and even after that, if the grass looks dead, it's a good idea to water, try to bring it back, see how much is there. At that point, you might be able to just cut underneath the ground, roll it up, and carry the rest away.
Well, I guess we'll be going and planting this weekend after all, until we're sure it's all really dead, and you've given us a lot to do.
So, I think we got a lot done. You've come to some conclusions. So your work ahead of you is to start getting rid of the lawn and start getting some ideas on what to do with the backyard. If you go to waterwisesb.org, some really good information there. Help is just a click away. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you,
and
Kelly.
we'll see you when you're ready.
Thanks again for having us.
Alrighty, have a great week.
Stay tuned for our next episode to find out what Fred and Stacy decided to replace their lawn with. If you're ready to get rid of your own dying lawn, but you have no idea what to replace it with, you're in luck. Up next, we take a look at a beautiful water-wise garden and see how it was designed from start to finish.
Hi, I'm Billy Goodnick, local landscape architect, and I've been really busy lately helping people murder their lawns. Today I want to show you an example of a project I did recently. It's a typical front yard situation a lot of you may also be facing right now. Let's have a look. When Bonnie and John contacted me about helping them with their landscape, what I saw was a mostly dead lawn with a little sort of male pattern baldness of Bermuda grass here and there. Like a lot of people, the owners knew that they needed to do something different here, but the first question a lot of people face is, what else can we do? We're all used to having front lawns and just having them present to the street. So a few things to consider are, can I use this space for something useful? Growing food, sitting outside, gathering, or is it just going to be something decorative, something that looks nice from the street? So let's say you're on board with the idea of getting rid of your lawn once and for all and replacing it with something more attractive, a planting only type solution. One of the things that hangs people up the most is getting down to the details of how many of which plant and how to organize them. My philosophy is you're always better off using fewer varieties of plants and using larger massings of them. As you can see here, the ground covers sweep through the entire garden. The flax against the front of the house, there's multiple of the same type of plant. Other plants are repeated in a few different areas of the garden. There's a few kangaroo paws here, they're repeated in the back. What that does is create what I like to call the I meant to do this situation. The opposite of that is going to the nursery, picking out all the plants that you love, bringing them back, and then trying to figure out how to create an attractive garden using too many ingredients. It's sort of like cooking. There's a point at which you stop throwing spices into the stew. In terms of planting strategy, this is pretty much a forward-facing garden. Taller plants toward the back, coming down to medium size, and ground covers toward the front. Somebody driving by or walking down the sidewalk is going to see a garden that's looking out at them. But we also have a situation in the backyard where when they look out toward the street, they see that. So there was some strategic placement of some taller screening plantings, but also plants worked around them that look nice when you look out from the backyard. When I start my plant selection process, I always start with the functional side. What can the plants do? Trees will provide shade, tall plants will provide screening, low ground covers might be used to hold a slope or prevent erosion. In this case, there was one very key necessity for the plants, and that was to screen the street from the inside view, but do it in a way without constructing a green wall. A lot of people have clipped hedges, that sort of thing. We wanted a softer look. So the choice, for a lot of reasons, was this Grevillea Long John. Part of the reason is that one of the owners' name is John, so we thought that would be a nice idea. But also, as you can see, it creates a very wispy sort of look. It softens the street without actually closing it out. And this plant, rather than a tree, is going to keep its foliage in the lower areas, so it's always going to be useful in terms of blocking that view. We're a little off season with the flowers, but it's got these fabulous sort of curlicue salmon pink flowers in clusters that come all over the garden. So it's a nice color harmony with the other reds and the finishes on the house. And it can be kept to this size, or I've seen them get as high as about 1.5 stories next to a building. So you can let them get big and open or keep them clipped back every once in a while and just have this soft, natural shape. Very, very low water using plant too. So I'm right where the focal point would be when you're looking out from the backyard toward the street. And one of the intents here was to create a little more variety, a little more contrast in the composition, since this is a focal point. To do that, we're using these really strong colored purple wandering Jew. Full name, Tradescantia Purple Heart, if you're looking for it. It's succulent, doesn't take a lot of water. As you can see, it loves to spread, but it can easily be cut back. What's really cool about this plant is it's got these wonderful sort of lighter purple flowers right in the center. It's a little 3-petaled flower, and I'm doing okay, but the bees are just loving it here. So part of this composition, next we step up to the pincushion plant. This is a form of leucospermum, and it has these beautiful multi-stamen flowers, and this plant will get, about so high and this wide, create a nice backdrop. And then the third plant in this killer combo is a fairly common plant, Mexican sage. This one is a variety called Salvia leucantha Santa Barbara, and it tends to be a little bit more of a dwarf form. And what's happening here is, although we have the sort of grays and greens in here, the purple flowers that are on this plant most of the time repeat the purple that we get down here in the Wandering Jew. So it's like there's little conversations between the plants that help them relate to each other. Again, going back to when we started on this, aside from the dead lawn, there was a path leading from the gate to this area here, but it was kind of a random collection of stepping stones, very thin, they were cracking. So to come up with something that would work here, I started by looking at what they already had in the backyard, which is identical to this stone. We just matched this, but we also made a point of making sure there's enough gap between the stones and some permeable material that what little water does fall on this, it's still going to go into the ground instead of running off. Here's something to keep in mind with front yard gardens. They're really viewed by two different audiences, especially this one. There's people driving by, and then there's people walking through the garden. When you're driving by, design needs to be fairly simple, or you're not really able to have it register with you. But when you're walking through, you can see subtle little combinations, and the garden can get a little bit more complex in terms of composition. So what's going on here is an example of that, call it a 2-mile-an-hour garden. You're walking through it. Notice that the walkway material is in the same sort of reds and earth tones as the rest of the garden and some of the house. This stone led me to selecting this ground cover. This is called pork and beans sedum. And you'll notice that when it's in the sun, it gets this nice sort of coppery color, which also marries beautifully to the dark bronzy colors, the browns that are in this flax. So we have really, again, a conversation between different elements of the garden all working together. What that does is create a sense of coherence, that everything is working together and you get to say, I meant to do this. So the last thing to think about is the longevity of the garden. We're trying to create gardens that are useful, that are beautiful, and are sustainable. Easy on the earth, not using a lot of resources. To that end, we chose plants that are low water using to begin with, and they're all adapted to using drip irrigation. Another key thing is to really understand what a plant wants to be when it grows up. They're all nice and cute when they're in 1-gallon and 5-gallon containers, but you want to do your research, understand how big a plant will get so you can space it in a way that prevents you from having clashes between plants, having to go in with your pruners and do battle. It's not fair to the plants, they lose some of their basic beauty, and it's also a lot of work that doesn't have to happen. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at this garden. Just know that there's something beyond gravel, mulch, or artificial turf. This is something most people can do. And if you get stuck, you need some help, be sure to give me a call.
For more tips on how to create a stunning Waterwise garden in your own yard, visit waterwisesb.org. We'll be right back with more GardenWise. Welcome back. An important part of having a healthy and sustainable garden is selecting Waterwise plants that will help attract beneficial insects. Up next, we talk to the co-founder of the Santa Barbara Beekeepers Guild to find out what you can do to create a bee-friendly garden.
Hi, I'm Kathy Ram. I'm with the Beekeepers Guild of Santa Barbara. We're here today at Terrasol Garden Center to show you some drought-tolerant plants that are bee-friendly. The Guild is an organization of backyard beekeepers who gather once a month and network with each other to support each other with our beekeeping practices. We have an educational program that goes out into the community schools here in Santa Barbara, and we teach the children about bees, beekeeping, and the importance of bees in our community. And on Earth Day, so many of the questions that I got asked was, how can I support the bees? We have a pollinator program at many of the local nurseries here in Santa Barbara. You can go and look for our little bee sticker that says bee friendly, and you will know that those are the drought tolerant plants that will attract bees and help support them. Okay, this is a lavender, and anything purple the bees really enjoy, those colors. Anything clustered the bees really enjoy. This is one example of a really good plant to put in your gardens. Any of the lavenders, any of the sages. Here we have all of the salvias that are completely drought tolerant, and the bees love it. What happens with the drought is that nobody's watering their plants, and so there's no nectar flow. So if you get a drought tolerant plant, the bees will have something to eat. And again, there's these dark colors. This is a really good example of what the bees really love. another salvia. And do not disregard the succulents. A lot of people right now are doing whole landscapes with succulents. So there's not much in bloom, but there is a yucca over here. When these are in full bloom, it's really, really beneficial for the bees. There's agaves, they're not in bloom right now, but there's calanchus that are also, they bloom. So don't disregard putting these in your gardens for bee-friendly gardens. Alrighty, let's go over to the herbs section. There's a lot of herbs that are really supportive of the bees. We have the African basil. This African basil blooms and it gets real bushy. You can eat it and you can let it bloom for the bees. Any of the herbs that blossom are also really, really good for the bees. The rosemaries, the thyme, the oreganos, all of these kinds of little flowering herbs make the bees very happy. These herbs are really important also because they support the immune system of the bees. They have healing properties that they bring back into their hives, and they feed their young with the pollen that they get off of these herbs. So why do you want to have bees in your garden? You don't want to be stung. You don't want that possibility. Well, first of all, don't worry about being stung. They won't sting you just to sting you. You want them in your gardens for several different reasons. They pollinate. If you have fruit trees, you're going to get 20% more fruit if you invite bees into your yard. For your vegetables, you're going to have a lot more yield with the bees being able to pollinate. And you want to just support the bees just to have them overall be in the world, because we all have food that needs to be pollinated. So if you're supporting them within your backyard, you're supporting the food chain. One of the things that you can do to support your bees in your backyard is right here with a bird feeder. Fill it with rocks or anything you would like, any kind of rock or crystal, something that the bees can land on and not drown. Fill it with water, and then they'll have some place to get drinks of water. There's very little of it right now. If you want to keep the bees out of your neighbor's swimming pools, this is a good way to do it, to give them a water source that's not a swimming pool. And all you have to do is just keep that filled with water. It's not a lot of water. You can use very little water to feed the bees. One of the most dangerous things for our bees today are pesticides and herbicides. If you can at all, stop using those in your yard. You really don't need to. They are taken back to the hive and they're fed, the pollens and the nectars are fed to the young, and that's the generation that dies off. It's not a necessity that you use pesticides. There are all kinds of alternatives. If you look at your soils and build your soils up, you won't have the pests that are decimating your yard. If you're interested in becoming a beekeeper, or if you're interested in just supporting the bees, we meet once a month on the first Sunday of every month. You can go to beguildsb.org and get our schedule of where we're going to be and what we're up to. We have workshops. We are going to be having candle dipping workshops and frame making workshops and different things like that we have all throughout the year. We also just meet and talk about bees and talk about what's happening in our hives and talk about what we're planting in our gardens.
To find pollinator promoting plants for your garden, visit any of these local nurseries and look for the Bee Friendly sticker. Once you've selected your plants, it's important that you adjust your irrigation system accordingly. Up next, we talk to Oscar Carmona, instructor for the county's Green Gardener program, about how to properly check and maintain your irrigation system.
Hello, Oscar Carmona, owner of Healing Grounds Nursery. I also teach the Sustainable Landscape program, the Green Gardener certification program through Santa Barbara City College non-credit education. And today I want to talk about irrigation management. The first point I want to make is that it's important whether you're a homeowner or a landscaper to check your systems regularly, especially if it's your first time on a site and you've never seen the system in operation. And usually when landscapers are around, systems aren't generally not on. So it's really a good idea to turn them on, turn the test segment of the irrigation controller on so that it runs through the cycles and you can visually see if the systems are working properly. That is, if they're in good working order, not broken parts, and if there is good coverage. Sometimes with careful observation, you can notice plants that maybe are not doing well or dry spots, and those as well are indicators that you're not getting head-to-head coverage, even coverage, or that somehow there may be a break in the line and the water's not getting to all the plants in an even fashion. So basically, you want to look for proper functioning. Here we have this system is completely drip. So you just want to make sure that the drippers are functioning as they should, and that you don't see any gushes. And you can only verify that, of course, if you do a test. Here clearly you can see that this is a properly functioning system. The dripper is working as it should, and it's pretty simple. Once you've verified that everything is working properly, then you can move the dial back to auto run. I recommend that you check your systems at least once a month, especially with a drought emergency that we have here in our area. The other important piece of information, especially during summer months, is that you utilize the seasonal adjust. And what that means is that rather than reprogram your system so that it either raises or lowers the amount of water that you need at any given time to save water, you can go to waterwisesb.org, and on their homepage they have a weekly listing of the seasonal adjust. This week it's 87%. And then you can turn the knob over to the seasonal adjust area, and by percentage, this one works by 5% increments. You lower or raise, and so I would just do it just under this. So it's 87, I set it at 85, and that allows you to reduce the water flow, but it's across the board without having to reprogram everything after or before. It's quite easy. Also critically important is that you realize that once we get rain, at least a quarter of an inch, by state law you need to turn off controllers for a minimum of 2 days. And so you can do that manually simply by turning the dial to off, and that will suffice. However, and hopefully you avail yourself to the use of the rain sensor, which is a sensor that extends out into the open so that it can receive moisture, and upon receiving a quarter inch, it will automatically turn off the system until which time it sufficiently dries out, and then it'll turn it on automatically. It's a very, very inexpensive tool to add to your controller that would automatically turn it off, or you can simply manually do the same. So in closing, again, it's important for you to make sure that you test your irrigation system for breaks, both in the lines or in the emitters themselves, especially if it's the first time that you're going to a site, because that's critically important to the work that you do as a landscape maintenance person or a homeowner if you want to have your plants growing successfully. Second thing is it's important to make regular adjustments to your controller, whether that be seasonally, monthly is better. And remember that you need to have your irrigation systems shut off for 48 hours after each rain.
To learn more about the Green Gardener program or to sign up for the class, visit greengardener.org. Well, that does it for this episode of Garden Wise. Remember, you are the agent of change, and together we can conserve water and create beautiful, climate-appropriate gardens. There are lots of resources online to help. Visit waterwisesb.org for tips or to view past episodes. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can give us a call at 564-5311. I'm your host, Becky Davis, and keep it water wise, Santa Barbara.